Welcome to a long time ago, the #1 Star Wars podcast with a guy who's addicted to auctions, Star Wars auctions, and and a guy who spent far too long trying to get a cuddly Grogu out of a claw machine.
I didn't know you were addicted to Star Wars auctions.
Very good. I spent a long time trying to get a cuddly Grogu out of one of the claw machines, but there is video evidence I'll put up eventually.
Yeah, that was funny.
But yeah, you've already seen it. So yeah, joined as always then with Martyn Long. My name's Adam Long. How's it all going, Martyn? All good?
Yeah, it's not too bad, not too bad. I think it's been an easier week for us because we haven't had Andor to sort of get to straight away on a Wednesday and then record on Wednesday night. So we've had a bit more preparation time.
Been a lot more relaxing, hasn't it?
Yeah.
prep for the podcast.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, believe it or not, we do actually do some prep. I mean, sometimes I know it doesn't look like it.
You wouldn't have thought it, no.
No.
But yeah, so we've teased it a little bit throughout the weeks based on, well, if people watch, they'll see the ever increasing wall of toys and figures behind Martyn. So we have teased that we were going to talk about that, and I think this week is the time to do so. Don't you?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've reached bursting point. So before it all falls over and crushes me to death, we should probably talk about it.
Yeah, if you are just listening, then yeah, you should get on and just see how it's all looking now, because it's quite a sight. It's it's floor to ceiling now. It's pretty immense. Do you have any sort of admin to do before we get started on that?
Nothing mega important, really. I mean, I just wanted to. I know we mentioned it last week on the podcast that I'd been watching Mandalorian season 2. I'd been doing a rewatch, and I finally finished it this week. And man, that's such a good show. I mean, I always loved it. I thought it was amazing, but I'm watching it a second time all the way through. It's phenomenal, that show. I cannot wait for season 3.
How many times have you watched it now?
Well, I've watched the Ahsoka episode and the Luke episode, spoiler alert, more than 3 or 4 times, but this is the second time I've watched it all the way through from episode 1 to 8 in order, in the space of about 3 or 4 days, maybe 5 days. And I think when it first came out, everyone was kind of saying, oh, it's a bit formulaic, it's a bit, travel here, do a mission, then move on to the next place. But having watched it a second time, I picked up loads more dialogue that could impact the future, which I won't go into now. But and I also didn't really feel like it was the go to a planet one week, do something for somebody, and then move on to the next part of the mission. It didn't come across that way at all. So I absolutely love that show. I cannot wait for season 3. I don't want to go into too much because we're not here to talk about that.
No. Well, I was going to ask, did you spot anything new? And you kind of already answered the question just based on the dialogue and everything then.
Well, there was one, I mean, just very quickly, there was one bit of dialogue I noticed in the episode The Jedi where the Mandalorian meets up with Ahsoka to see if she'll train Grogu. And they're talking about the governess, I think she is, on the planet, who's mining the planet for its resources, and Ahsoka tells the Mandalorian that she did it during the Empire so that she could build starships for the Empire. And the Mandalorian turned to Ahsoka and said, well, it looks like she's still doing it now. So that bit of dialogue to me said that, well, is this kind of contributing to where the fleet that Palpatine had in the Rise of Skywalker came from? It could be. I mean, I know they're actively trying to sort of make the sequel trilogy a little bit better.
Yeah, well, I do feel like the Mandalorian did put a lot into filling out the context, if you like, of the sequels.
I agree. In fact, I'm now convinced that by the end of the Mandalorian's run, when it finishes, we'll have a full explanation as to how Snoke came about,
Mm.
how they ended up cloning, obviously, the Emperor, and how they had the fleet of Star Destroyers just sitting there and no one knew about them. So I'm
Well,
fully convinced that that's going to happen.
okay. Well, let's leave those predictions for when Series 3 comes out.
Possibly even
I
season
don't know.
7.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't know how many series they're planning,
Yeah.
seasons. So yeah, let's get on to the many auctions that you've been a part of. Then, shall we?
Yeah. I mean, since we did an auction video, it must have been what, 3 months ago, and I
Yeah,
did an
something like that.
auction. Well, since that auction, I've done four more auctions, and
You've told us that you've become something of an auction addict for these toy
I,
auctions now.
I have, but there's a few sort of things I want to say about that. Is obviously you see the collection that behind me, and obviously that doesn't pay for itself. So I've found, and this is no secret. I'm sure I'm not the only person who thought of this, but
Mm,
if you go on these toy auctions, which there are several a week, it's crazy how many there are in the
all right.
UK, and if you can. If you're willing to just hold out and not pay too much, you can get some lots with a lot of Star Wars figures
Yeah.
in them. Not necessarily all particularly sought after, but still, if you get them cheap enough, you'll be able to, perhaps resell them yourself, which is what I do. And the money I raise from reselling them is what pays for what's behind me. So if I don't sell them, obviously I can't buy anything new.
Exactly.
So that's the reason I do the auctions. And yes, you're right, I am slightly addicted because I do enjoy the hunt of the auctions, but it does serve a purpose in my eyes as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So go on then. The four auctions you say.
Yeah.
Do you have any? Do you even remember what came from all of those? Have you received everything now?
I've received everything. I don't think if you can see over if you're looking at the screen right hand side, you'll see some
Yeah.
Revenge of the Sith figures, which are all graded,
Yeah.
which I bought an auction, and I bought each. I'll give you an insight. I bought three. They were in lots of three, so I bought three figures for £40. And if you think grading costs about 25 to £30 to grade something,
Right.
whoever was selling them obviously, didn't get their money back. But I'm not going to sell them all. As you can see, I've got some behind me, but the ones I am going to sell, on 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 £30 per three figures.
Mm.
If I even sell one of them at £30, I'm going to make my money back.
Quits
So
in. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So any profit I make after that, fingers crossed, will go towards things I do want to keep and collect. So
Yeah.
that was a big haul I got. I do. There always seems to be a large amount of episode one figures, which is no shock. But I did come across a nice selection of graded episode one figures in an
Mm.
auction which I purchased, and unbelievably, they're all graded 90, or AFA
Well,
grade 90, which is a really high grade for those who don't know.
you
And
said
they,
AFA
sorry,
is the American grading,
yeah,
didn't
there's
you,
there's
on
three
previous?
there's three main grading companies really. There's CAS, there's AFA, which is the Action Figure Authority, and then there's UKG, which is the UK
Hmm.
graders. And these were all AFA grades. And yeah, I sold all those Phantom Menace graded figures within a week of putting them on
Oh wow.
eBay. And I think I got all three of them for, I think it was £35, and I sold them in excess of £40 each.
Each.
Yeah,
Blimey.
so I
So
mean,
somebody's just trying to get rid of them sharpish, at auction and trying their
mm,
luck.
mm.
And I suppose it's being in the right place at the right time, isn't it?
It's like any auction. It's like an auction house all the way to actually doing it online on eBay.
Mm.
If you have five or six people who want the item
Yeah.
at the same time, you're going to get a lot of money for it.
Get a
If
bidding war, don't you? Yeah.
exactly, and then if you have just the one person, and so I always go through these auctions in the evenings sometimes, and I'll like or put favorite everything that I think, oh, that would be good to get if I can get it at the right
Mm.
price. And yeah, I mean, other things I've been getting, there's always a lot of Power of the Force figures available,
Yeah.
and believe it or not, even though Power of the Force wasn't a particularly popular line, again, if you can get them for a cheap enough price on auction, that obviously that includes the auctioneer's fees as well, then
Hmm.
they're absolutely worth getting hold of. And I'm not going to hide any secrets. The main auction company I use is a company called Vectis, and it's an online auction. And
Maybe you should. But, well, I mean, we don't get enough viewers to worry about it, but
no,
at this
no,
point, but you never know. Like one day, it might
yeah,
you might
but
get a lot of competition for these
possibly,
auctions. I don't know.
possibly, but the collectors fraternity, I think I'm not too worried about sharing secrets.
Hmm.
I've had so many friends who I've made through collecting, and just a chap who won't say his name I was been chatting to the last 2 days, who I've never met before, but just sort of got in touch with him about a few items, and we've fast become good friends, and
Yeah.
we've been talking about our collections and stuff. So
Well, I mean, it's amazing. Like this podcast has really sort of opened my eyes to how popular collecting is. I knew it was big,
mm,
but
mm,
like, I don't know. I just didn't think it was even remotely as big. And
yeah,
it's not really just this either, is it? It's not people will collect anything. Like um I know one of my mates big into his games, is video games. And he's collecting all things like that. And even that sort of thing can be graded and
yeah.
oh,
Oh,
it's just
absolutely.
insane. Like
Anything can be graded. I mean, some people even collect Funko Pops, believe it or not, which is just shocking.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm aware that people collect Funko
Yeah.
Pops, but like, I wouldn't have thought well, even those, do they get graded? You know,
Yes.
like
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they
yeah.
get graded.
But
And
they're such a
there's
modern thing at the moment, aren't they,
no.
Funko Pops? So I don't know.
Well,
Like I
when
think
Game of Thrones first came out, and we'll quickly make a sidestep to Game of Thrones. I bought all of the
haven't
original
seen it.
wave. Yeah, no, we all know
We
that.
know that.
I bought the original wave of Funko Pop characters for the first season of Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
and I just thought, oh, these are a bit of fun, so I gave them, because Steph, my wife, loves Game of Thrones, so I bought them all for Christmas. Anyway, like most things, you buy it as a silly thing at Christmas. They get put in a cupboard and never seen again.
Hmm.
Anyway, about 5 years later, we were like, oh, we need to. We were moving house. We needed to make space, so we put them on eBay, and I
Yeah.
probably paid, I don't know, £10 each
Yeah.
for them. I
Yeah.
have no idea. Selling them for 40, £50 each, some of them.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's incredible. Yeah.
just because they were the first wave, and
Of Game of Thrones as
of
well.
Game of
Yeah.
Thrones,
Such a
exactly. So,
popular TV show to some people.
and it's purely luck as well, purely luck, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think the important thing with collecting is you have to collect what you love, and you
Mm.
can't see it as a
An
I'm going to
investment
buy
as
this, an
such.
investment. I mean, of course, that's always in the back of your mind, and anyone who
Mm.
tells any different isn't telling you the truth, I don't think. But I would never consider selling any of the stuff that's behind me, because it's stuff that I love,
Yeah.
and it's the stuff that I've personally picked out to collect.
And
The stuff,
worked quite hard to find as well in most cases.
yes, very hard in some cases, and that's why I do these auctions to make sure that I can fund the stuff sitting
Yeah.
behind me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we've mentioned it before. You got a pretty good little side hustle going. So I don't know if you want to mention your eBay shop, but
I'll put a link at the bottom of the description. But as you say, not enough people watch or listen, so I don't think I'll get an influx of
yeah,
custom. But by all means, I'll put
maybe,
it
maybe
there.
not. But if it's collectors, we might get a few collectors listen. So
Yeah, I
might,
mean, I'd rather they liked and subscribed to this podcast, to be honest with you,
yeah,
than have a look at my eBay store. But I'll leave that up to the people watching.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so you've mentioned a few of the lines. What other lines have you picked up?
Well, I've done a note of the last auction, which was delivered to me on Friday. Sorry, Monday, and I got Saga Collection, Saga Legends, Legacy Collections, Clone Wars, Revenge of the Sith, Black Series, Power of the Force, and Power of the Jedi. So there was quite a lot of different lines in there,
Yeah, yeah.
and
If is that the one we did the Instagram reel on?
that's right. Yes, that,
So
that was everything that
if
came on Monday.
anyone wants to see that, I mean, I'll put pictures up on here, but
Hmm.
yeah,
We could just run the video while we're
check out the
talking, can't you?
Instagram. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So do you know how many lines there have been released from just from
Oh,
Star Wars lines?
do you know what, Adam? I honestly, I don't know.
Must be so many.
I mean, as we've mentioned before, my collecting basically was in the early 80s for the original Kenner line
Mm.
and Palitoy line. And then I stopped collecting, as obviously as you do as you get a bit older. And then it's only as I've, got a job, and when I was a bit older, I started collecting again. And that was the vintage collection, was my first, as we've mentioned before, foray into collecting as an adult.
Yeah.
But all the lines in between that I completely missed out, and don't really know too much about. And it's only through auctions really that I'm learning
Mm.
these things. And I've got to be honest, when I do these auctions, and one of the boxes in a lot that I bought the other day had, I think it was 25 Power of the Jedi and Power of the Force
Mm.
carded figures on. And I did it on a punt because I had absolutely no idea if any of them were good figures, any of
Yeah.
them were figures that people were desperate to get hold of. I just did it on a punt. So, a lot of it is, gut feeling really, that you
Mm.
think you'll be able to, get your money back basically.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, have you been fond of any of these new lines at all? Have you like picked some up and gone, actually, that's pretty cool?
Yeah, there was there's one I mentioned a few weeks back that I got. It was a um Monamon, I think his name was. I can't see him at the moment, but it was sort of the elephant looking
Efan Mon?
Ephant Mon. Well, see,
I don't know
Adam,
how I
you are
remembered
learning,
that.
my friend. You are learning. Yeah, Ephant Mon figure, and that I instantly thought, that's an amazing figure. I'm keeping that. That was brilliant. I did get a Max
What line
Rebo.
was that from? Do you
I think
remember?
that was the Saga Legends line, I think,
Hmm.
but someone will correct me if I'm wrong. And there was a Max Rebo that I
Yeah.
really wanted to keep, but no, I sold that.
Everyone loves Max Rebo, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's in the Revenge of the Sith line. Well, basically, I have one rule: if I have a Darth Sidious or Emperor Palpatine figure, it doesn't matter what line it is, I'll keep it because he's my favorite character. So I'll keep that.
That's quite a
There's
cool
a
thing to collect, actually. One particular character. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, there's
quite
some people
nice.
who do that, and I've seen some of the pictures of their collection online, and
Mm.
you've never seen so many Darth Vaders in your
Yeah.
life. It's absolutely mental, and Boba Fett's.
Well,
It's
yeah. But I
crazy.
think a lot of people would like to go for Boba Fett, but he's pretty pricey, isn't he?
Yes, absolutely. If you want a good looking one that hasn't been battered too much,
Yeah.
I think you, especially vintage, you're gonna be spending
Mm.
quite a lot of money.
But
And
is Boba Fett quite pricey in most lines, isn't he?
well, there was a period when Book of Boba Fett came out where the prices really rocketed, and
Mm.
that's another thing about collecting is one month prices can be pretty
It's like
steady.
stocks, isn't it?
It is. It
Just
is
goes
exactly
up
like
and
stocks.
down, but depending. Yeah.
During the pandemic, it was the probably the highest value time for buying Star Wars figures.
Wow.
Because people were sat at home in front of their computers, and
Yeah.
obviously governments around the world were giving a lot of people cash, basically
Free money.
free money. And honestly, some of the things you would have paid £100 for were then going up to £250.
Wow.
But looking at prices now, and we're talking high end prices, we're not talking the sort of stuff I'd get from an auction. They've really started to drop like lead now. So, any
Mm.
suggestion to people who are thinking of starting a collection of vintage? It's still going to be expensive. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
it's starting
It's
to
the
drop now.
time to start thinking about buying then.
Yeah.
Mm.
As long as you've got enough disposable cash.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
um,
think what else have you picked up then?
Well, I've obviously picked up all of that stuff that I previously mentioned, but there was three items that I picked up, and I bought these, and I genuinely mean this. I'm not making it up. I bought these to resell as well, and they were basically three loose vintage Kenner Star Wars figures that had been graded.
Okay.
Just to describe them, I'm sure we'll put a picture up on the screen,
Yeah.
but they're the figure out of their card and bubble, and they're put in a plastic case with their weapon, and then they're
Mhm.
graded by the grading companies. And I managed to get hold of a Chewbacca, a Hammerhead, and Ree's character.
Mhm.
Obviously Ree's being from Jabba's palace,
What
and
what grading were they?
the Chewie was a 75, which is not bad, but could be better.
Hmm.
The Hammerhead was an 80, and the Ree's were an 80. Was an 80. Now, a rule of thumb is an 80 and below is going to be reasonably priced, to be quite frank. You
Mm.
know, it's still going to be expensive. I mean, there's more money than you would expect to pay for a little 3 and 3/4 inch plastic figure
Yeah.
graded. But when you go to 85, that's when the money starts to rise, because we're
Okay.
talking near mint then,
Mm.
figures. So I managed to get these three figures in an auction, and the plastic acrylic cases that they came in, they're a little bit dirty, so I gave them a good clean and polished them up and
Hmm.
put them on my table, and I just sat there looking at them for a while, and they were sparkling in the light. And I was thinking, oh man, these are great. This reminds me so much of being a little kid and having these figures. I had all these three of these figures when I was a
Yeah.
kid, and playing with them. And I thought to myself, well, the vintage collection, that's my number one collecting gig, if you like, behind me.
Yeah.
But I've reached kind of an impasse now with that, because there are three figures that I haven't got out of the entire collection, and I'm sure they'll come up one day, but they're so expensive it's going to be a while.
Mm.
So I thought to myself, well, I'm going to need to fill, when those Revenge of the Sith ones behind me move on, I'm going to need something to fill those three shelves. So I thought to myself, you know what? I really, really, really have nostalgia for these old Kenner figures, and I do have some carded vintage Kenner figures that are
Mm.
graded behind me. I've got a fair few of those, but they're just silly money. You just can't collect all of those unless you've got
No.
thousands and thousands of pounds. Whereas these loose, then they still give you the nostalgia without the card, because obviously
Yeah.
as a kid you remember having them in your hand. So I thought to myself, I'm going to set myself a little bit of a challenge, and
Here we go.
it's not going to be a challenge with any time set on it, because when you get to a certain number of these figures, you need to save up. But I've decided that I'm going to try, and the opposite word there is try, to collect all 96 of the original Kenner line.
Amazing. Yeah.
But I'm going to try and collect them all graded. So whether that me,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
well, I'm not going to buy them necessarily graded, but I'm going to try and purchase them graded if they're at a reasonable price for
Yeah.
me, or collect them loose, with the weapons, or perhaps buy the figure, and try and get hold of the weapon elsewhere to
Mm.
match up with the figure, and then send them off to be graded myself. Now, grading times are around about 3 to 6 months at the moment, so anything I did send off would take a while
Yeah.
anyway. But it's something that I'm really got behind, and I'm really excited to do
You're
it,
quite,
because
yeah,
I really, really,
a new
I
challenge.
yeah. Well, if you think the vintage collection, the reason I collect it is the nostalgia value. So
It's
why not
nothing
now?
more nostalgic than the original. What is it?
Exactly.
1977 to
That was
80,
78 to 85,
78 to
that original
85.
line.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's going to be challenging. It's going to be very challenging to get all 96, because, as we've discussed before, there's a few out there that, if you want to buy just loose, you're
Mm.
talking £400 for their figure, and that's, I can't afford to spend
Silly
£400
money.
on a
Yeah.
figure. But I'm going to try as hard as I can to do what I can.
Mm.
So I know we kind of briefly spoke about this, but I think we should perhaps document and catalog my journey
Absolutely. Yeah.
into this, and then perhaps once a month we can report back how I'm doing, what I've managed to pick up that month, any stories that I've got into to try and
Yeah.
get these
Yeah.
figures. So I don't know what you think about that, but I'm really excited, because
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
it's kind of re-sparked my collecting, because, as I said, the vintage collection, I'm
It's more or less
there and
done. Yeah.
thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah.
And everything else will just be pre-orders.
No,
So
that sounds pretty awesome.
yeah,
I'm well behind this challenge, to be honest, and I'm sure anyone watching, they've got to be as well. I would have thought, be excited, hopefully, be excited to watch and see the progress. But who knows? So, what about though? You've got it's going to be graded figures to begin, well, as best you can.
yeah.
What's your graded minimum? Like, so
Well,
will you accept like 75s? Or are you hoping 80s and above?
well, let's take some of them, for example, like Yak Face, which, if you're going to get an 85, I think I saw one online for £950 the other day for an 85 grade. And no, no.
No, and that's
So
not even carded.
no, that's not even carded. That's loose
Damn.
graded. So I would be prepared to probably go to 75 on a yak face graded,
Mm.
but I'm going to try as hard as I can to try and get 85s for the figures that are quite easy to get hold of, like the Klaatuus, for example. I mean, they're 10 a penny, and the Rebel Endor Commando figures, they're I mean, you can pick those up for, I've seen some go on eBay for about £30. So
Mm.
graded 80/85. So, while that's a lot of money, don't get me wrong, it's affordable if I was to get one every now and again.
Yeah.
But also I'll keep an eye out for good looking loose figures as well, not only on auction sites, but perhaps when we go back to doing our car boot challenge that we're going to do again next year. Spoiler alert.
Yes. Yeah.
We can perhaps both have a look.
Yeah, definitely.
And without inviting myself over, I think you mentioned that there might be a toy auction
There
near
is a
where you
toy
live.
fair coming up.
Toy
Coming
fair,
up. It's
sorry.
toy fair
So
coming up in January.
so I may pop down to see you, and
Yeah.
we'll see what perhaps we can do a bit of filming down there, and
Yeah.
see if we can pick anything up down there to add to the collection.
Yeah.
So
That sounds
yeah,
good. Does sound
it's,
good.
yeah.
Well, that it makes me want to have a little challenge or a collecting journey of my own. And I know we
I
have
agree.
spoken about it
Well,
on
can I, before
numerous
you go on,
occasions.
sorry, Adam, I do apologize for
Go on.
interrupting you, but I was talking to one of our viewers the other day via text message. And do you know what one of the things he said to me? He said, when's Adam going to get some Star Wars stuff behind him? When's he going to start collecting some stuff? And I said to him, said to him, well, hold your horses. There might be
Yeah,
something coming up. So,
yeah. We've been talking about it for a little while. Is Admiral Akbar not good enough for him?
well, no, I'm not going to mention his name. I'm sure he'll watch and he'll put a comment in below. But he did say, come on. We didn't. I'm paraphrasing, but he did say, come on, Admiral Akbar, come on.
Yeah, well, yeah, I want to do it. It is going to be tricky because money can be tight at this time, but
Of course,
with a little one about, but um, yeah, we've got an idea. I want to get a little bounty of figures, so we will see what I want to get, and we need to establish some sort of rules, if you like, because I want it to be a challenge. I don't want to just have to. I don't want to just be able to go out and buy
no,
carded figures or whatever.
no.
And I
You
want
need to, yeah,
whether I know what line I'm going to get yet. I imagine
yeah.
I'll go vintage collection because I just really like that line.
Mm.
Possibly 1.0 because I can't imagine my 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 money will stretch as far to get the originals.
No.
But
Yeah, well, I mean, you just need to define it really. Do you want to
mm,
collect one character? Do you want to collect one line? Do you want to collect a certain group of characters, but it can be all lines?
I mean, imagine
Can
what
they?
it would look like if I had just Admiral Akbars everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not
I
even
don't
my
think
favorite character, but it'll be quite funny.
I will get my action figure guide out. I've got a book that has lists every action figure ever released, and I'm pretty sure there wasn't that many Admiral Akbars. So that could be
That's a
pretty quick.
that's a damn shame. That's
But
a damn shame. Yeah,
yeah,
we've got an idea though, haven't we? We've discussed what
definitely.
we're looking like getting, and I
Yeah,
might have hinted it a minute ago. So if you think
yeah,
you know, just leave it in the comment section
yeah.
below.
Yeah,
But
definitely. Yeah,
uh,
so
go
that'd be
on.
good fun. No,
Yeah,
it'd be good fun. Good
yeah,
fun.
yeah. But we'll come up with some more sort of rules for it for me. Um, but that will do us for this week's podcast. We've spoken enough. I'm, I'm sure. Yeah, you're all bored now. But if you're not bored and you did enjoy this episode, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Um, Otherwise, we'll catch you in the next one. I'll see you later.
Bye.